going back to World War II, I served in the Battle of the Bulge in the 75th Recon Troop. I was a machine gunner on a Jeep and also in an armored car. And our jobs were to go behind the lines and find the enemy for the infantry to fight. So that was an intriguing job. And at one point, that's where I got wounded. We pulled into a farmhouse, and the sergeant told me to go up and knock the corner out of a barn so we could see over the crest. And just about the time I got the corner knocked out, the Germans started firing their 88s, and it went right through the barn. And I got shrapnel wounds in my back and my neck. And the shell landed in the yard where one Jeep driver was frying some chicken in his helmet. And at that time, we were about 14 miles behind the lines. So we pursued this horse-drawn 88, and we've done away with that. And then we turned around and headed on back to the lines, and come to find out that the radio operator had forgotten the password. So we got stuck there a couple more days before we could get through their own lines until we got a password. So that was part of our time, and one time we were even 26 miles behind the lines. And we had a fellow named Lindsay. He got hit by a shell and got his stomach all tore up, and we had to carry him around on the back of an armored car, strapped with all our belts, 2 or 3 belts, to keep his insides from falling out. And believe it or not, he lived, and he had made several of our 75th reunions. And he went on to graduate from engineering school. So that's plus the fact that we served in the real bitter cold weather. If you hit the snow and laid there for half an hour, you were half frozen. And one time we were bivouacking, stationed not waiting for orders to proceed someplace. And we didn't know it, but the Graves registration came by and wanted to know if we'd seen any GIs. And we said no, and they got fishing around, and here we were bivouacked where about 16 dead GIs were laying, all frozen. And of course that was heartbreaking. And after we got done with the Battle of the Bulge, we wound up in France, in the Ruhr Valley, down, not the Ruhr Valley, but into the Colmar pocket, which was almost as bad as the Battle of the Bulge. So we got assigned to the French 1st Moroccan Army, then the French 1st, and finally we got by ourselves, and we had shells landing all over, and we got into the woods, and I got into a crater, and I fell asleep because we'd traveled 2 or 3 days and nights without any sleep going over the mountains in all this snow. So I woke up, and Lord behold, there wasn't nobody around. And I had to crawl out of the woods, and the guys found me, and they thought I'd been hit. But I lucked out, and I hadn't, because there was always a saying, if you laid in a crater, you're about to get hit again. But luckily I didn't. Then I joined the reserve, and then when the Korean War broke out, I got called back into service, and I decided I lost my business. I decided when I was in Korea to re-enlist. So I just stayed on in the Army, and I continued on served 27 months in Korea, And then I was in the engineers, and they found out that I had worked at the Coast Guard in big marine engines. So they transferred me to the locomotive repair shop in Korea. And I ran that as a sergeant doing a colonel's job for about 5.5 months. Then I came home and got stationed at Baltimore at the B&O Railroad as a OJT. Then we transferred to Fort Eustis, Virginia, and I wound up as a outside purchasing agent for research and development. And from there, I transferred to Yuma Test Station in Arizona. And then from there, I went to Vietnam, and I served 2 years and left there the day that President Kennedy got assassinated. And then I went back to Korea in 1968 on TDY. At that time, I was working for the Inspector General of the First Army, and I was traveling 43 weeks a year, flying someplace different every week. And one day I got a phone call from my colonel and told me to report to the general on Thursday at 4 o'clock, which I did, and Saturday I was back in Vietnam. So I got stuck there at TDY for another year, and then I came back home and got stationed back at Fort Meade at the IG due to my wife telling the colonel that I was back at Fort Meade. So he quickly requisitioned my services. So I stayed there until I finally retired and on medical retirement on March 19th, 1971. And since then I've been retired from there. But incidentally, the previous fellow he went to Australia. Well, I traveled from Australia in 1932, 33. That's where I was born. And I used to tell the guys, they'd get bitching about the unit and all. I said, look, I traveled the furthest to join this outfit, so stop your bitching. And they'd say, well, where'd you come from? And I'd tell them. They said, oh my goodness. And another incident, we were in Wales waiting to go to Europe and or to France, and the captain sent for me, and he says, I can't understand these people. He says, how about interpreting this for me? So I was an interpreter with the people in Wales because I was still had my Australian brogue then.